Hello and welcome everyone. We're just going to be starting in about another minute. So thanks for your patience. All right, welcome everyone to a joint Mayor's Innovation Project, American Rivers, Water Environment Research Foundation, and Efficiency Cities Network call on the topic of integrated water management and the city agenda. This is the second in a three-part series. Thanks for joining us. This is Mel Meter, Senior Associate at the Mayor's Innovation Project, and we're thrilled to welcome you all today. A note on who's hosting the technology behind the call: Efficiency Cities Network exists to share good ideas for cities, how to make them work more efficiently and effectively, focusing traditionally on energy efficiency, but with interests far beyond that world. We host an ongoing series of conversations about these topics and keep recordings of past discussions on our website. You can access them at efficiencycities.org and sign up for notification about future calls. I'll be turning over moderation duties to Jenny Hoffner at American Rivers in just a second, but first a few housekeeping notes. The call is being recorded. Your lines are all muted, and if you have questions, you're welcome to send them along via the question box in your GoToWebinar interface at any time. We'll sort through them and ask them at the end. Questions are linked to your name, so we will follow up by email if we don't get the answer to your questions on air. As our first webinar explored, integrated water management has tremendous potential for cities, and local government leaders outside water utilities can also play a major role in implementing these approaches. We're excited to explore the co-benefits and triple bottom line possibilities that integrated water management can offer to any city looking to manage its water with better outcomes for sustainability, budgeting, and social benefits. And now I'll turn it over to Jenny Hoffner, Vice President of River Conservation Strategies at American Rivers.
Thanks, Mel, for that introduction, and greetings, everyone. Again, my name is Jenny Hoffner, and I am the Vice President for Conservation Strategies in American Rivers. For those of you who don't know us, American Rivers is a national nonprofit whose mission is to protect wild rivers, restore damaged rivers, and conserve clean water for people and nature. Part of conserving clean water for people and nature is managing water in our cities and in our communities sustainably, and in such a way that the source of the water, often a river, thrives. Sustainable water management is core to our mission, and that's why I'm really thrilled to be here co-hosting this webinar and why we're happy to have you joining us today. Before we get started, I just want to take a moment to thank our partners at the Mayor's Innovation Project, the Water Environment Research Foundation, and the Efficiency Cities Network, to thank our guest speakers, and to welcome you to our webinar titled Integrated Water Management and the City Agenda. Today, we are going to introduce you to an approach to water management that is gaining traction in the U.S. and in cities and communities. And we think that this approach has real potential to restore and protect rivers, as well as sustain our communities. The approach is called integrated water management. And today we'll hear from our experts as they share their stories of advancing integrated water management and transforming their communities. And afterwards, we will provide an opportunity for you to ask questions of our experts on the topic of integrated water management and their work. A note about questions: we're going to ask that you ask your questions through the questions interface that, in the chat box area. And at the end of the hour, I'll be asking those questions of our guests. We'll be wrapping up just before the top of the hour, so if we don't get to all of your questions, we will do our best to reach back out to you with an answer. So to kick things off, I would like to highlight some of the challenges that drive the need for integrated water management. As we know, urban water challenges we face are many. Primary among them is how we face a future with too much water, too little water, or water at the wrong time. Extremes in weather and the effects of climate change really demand resiliency in our infrastructure and flexibility in how we manage our water in our cities and communities. Population growth, development pressure, increasing demands for finite resources all add to the complexity and the urgency of this water challenge. Moreover, our historically siloed approach to water management in our communities has contributed to our water challenges and in many cases exacerbated them. Now, it's been said that we can't solve problems by using the same kind of thinking we used when we created them. That was Albert Einstein. And if that's the case, and Albert was a pretty smart guy, then we need a new approach. And that's where integrated water management comes in. An integrated water management approach seeks to break down silos to balance the triple bottom line of social, economic, and environmental benefits in an equitable and sustainable manner that can create flexible and resilient infrastructure that can respond to a range of scenarios. Integrated water management considers the urban water cycle as a single integrated system in which all urban water flows are recognized as potential resources. Integrated water management is practiced through inclusive and jointly planned management of all water systems in order to restore hydrological cycling where all waters are resources and are valued and put to use. Wastewater is recycled to become drinking water. Stormwater is infiltrated through green infrastructure and supports healthy river flows that provide drinking water and assimilates waste. Drinking water supplies are optimized through efficiency and conservation, leaving more water in the river. So how does all this happen? Typically through unprecedented communication and collaboration, more communication with more people. If decision makers understand what other people are doing or thinking or feeling, they can make more informed decisions, which will have a higher likelihood of success. And collaboration is critical, as some tasks just simply cannot be accomplished with one organization, one department, or one sector. And one more thing about integrated water management, it happens at different scales. For our purposes, integrated water management happens at 3 critical scales: within the water utility, across departments within a city or community, and at the watershed scale. Connecting the waters at a utility scale is about breaking down the silos between a stormwater, a drinking water, a wastewater utility. At the city level, it's about incorporating water planning into the management of all city functions and departments. And finally, at the watershed scale is where cities and communities can reach upstream and they can reach downstream to neighboring communities to manage a shared resource collectively. At each scale, integrated water management is about connecting across silos and across political boundaries, and it's about connecting people and projects and planning and systems so they all connect to water. So today we are going to hear from 2 experts in the field of water management who will share their stories about how they connected integrated water management approaches to important issues in their city in order to address critical water issues, but also urban issues in their city. And first, today we will hear from Howard Neukrug, the former director of the Philly Water Department. Howard Neukrug served as Philadelphia's water commissioner from 2011 to 2016 and recently retired after 36 years with the city. He is a recognized national leader in the U.S. water industry, and he's a professional engineer with a degree from the University of Pennsylvania, where he currently teaches a course in the U.S. On the U.S. water industry in the 21st century. And after Howard, we'll hear from Tom Rhoads. Tom Rhoads is the commissioner of the Onondaga County Department of Water Environment Protection, which is dedicated to protecting and improving the water environment in a cost-effective manner and assuring the health and sustainability of the community and economy through the use of green infrastructure as well as traditional treatment facilities. Mr. Rhoads is a professional engineer as well, with a degree in civil engineering and a master's in business administration and 3 decades of public service and engineering experience. We are thrilled to have both of you with us today. And at this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn over the mic to Howard.
Thank you very much, Jen and Mel, for giving me the opportunity to talk today about some of my favorite subjects, which is 2 subjects. One is water and the other one is cities. And how I've been working for quite some time to figure out how water utilities can work with cities and get to this point where cities are a little bit more resilient, a little bit more sustainable, livable, and how we take our environmental, economic, and demographic challenges that we all have and make some changes, and how to do that with some big thinking to make big changes. Can I get the next slide, please? As Jen was just talking about the integrated watershed management, it always needs repeating that the water industry has been working in silos, and those little bars there are showing silos of everything that we do is in response to some regulation, some law, some need that we have. And our problem as an industry has been for the last 100 years or so is that we got very good at these individual silos, but we haven't really figured out how to fully integrate across those silos. And by that I mean, the Clean Water Act calls for fishable, swimmable. The Safe Drinking Water Act calls for drinkable. And somehow we got to bring those things together and say Clean Water Act, Safe Drinking Water Act. We're really all about the same thing. And never forget the mayors who are interested in safe, attractive, and accessible. And bringing all that together into one theme is something I'm really looking forward to doing. Next slide, please. Just a word about great water cities. We have so many of them in the U.S. and what makes one, and this is an early picture of New York City, and just obvious things listed on the left-hand side here, but we should never forget that there is a reason why cities are situated where they are. Almost always they're situated next to a good water supply. Almost always they're situated in a place where they were able to at some point use water power to power their facilities. Ports are always very important, and the whole list of things here. And the relationship between water and cities and the history of water and cities goes way back. Next slide, please. This is a really fascinating picture. I wish I could see your faces when you realize what you're looking at here. That's a farmhouse in the front, and in the background that was a stream, and the stream was buried. It was made into a sewer, and what you're looking at is the arch of the sewer, and then you have these two chimney-like things. Those are actually the manholes, and what's that telling you is that that stream that was covered by that sewer is about to be filled, the whole stream valley is about to be filled in with about 20, 30 feet of fill in order to level out your city. And this happened all over Philadelphia, New York, Washington, and many, many, many other cities in the U.S. And it really, I love this slide because it really epitomizes what kind of issues we're trying to deal with today. Next slide, please. This is actually a sewer overflow chamber from New York City. And basically, when it's not raining, that's the sewage water going down from the outfall in this chamber and going down into a pipe that takes to the wastewater plant for treatment. What's interesting is that even a small rainstorm will fill that pipe up, and that man better get out of there pretty quick and push the tide gates that are on the left-hand side of the screen open and dump the water into our rivers. And that's the problem we're trying to solve, is how do you deal with so much rainfall? Next slide, please. So how do you keep sewage water from overflowing our pipes into the rivers? Well, the first opportunity I think has passed us by. We can't make it stop raining so much, except maybe out west, but on the East Coast we have not been able to do that. And second way of doing this is to increase the sewer capacity, which a lot of cities have been doing, which means basically increasing the capacity of your sewer system to be able to handle the additional amounts of rainwater that are coming in. And the third way, which is the newer way, which is stop putting rainwater into the sewer, and that's the green fashion we'll be talking about. And it's a fascinating way to, instead of increasing capacity, you're taking your existing capacity of your system and you're decreasing the demand on that capacity. Next slide, please. Most cities today, if they haven't already, are doing some form of mixing the green and the gray being the increasing sewer capacity, plant capacities, and green, which is more sustainable long-term method in order to come up with the optimized level of management. Next slide, please. And this is just a slide showing you that there's so many different ways to manage rainwater in a city that all are really involved with how do you infiltrate, transpirate, and manage stormwater in a way that benefits a city rather than taking this rainwater and putting it down to a sewer and making it into a waste product. Next slide. We've been going through this this change for about a decade now, and I've been using this graph for about just as long, and it really shows the change in time that's required to go from the very few visionaries, the early adopters of any kind of new technology adoption, to the pragmatists, conservatives, and then finally the skeptics. And when I first started showing this, I put the arrow very closely to where it says early market and said that's kind of where we are now. And today, I'm pretty comfortable in saying that we're about a third way up the blue line of pragmatists, early majority. We're seeing a lot of support for green infrastructure and for figuring out how it really works in cities. And believe it or not, it's become a technology unto itself, and the idea of taking rainwater and putting it into the soil is not as simple as it seems in big cities, and that's why it's been taking some time. Next slide, please. And the other part that's causing some problems, this is a Machiavelli quote about deep systems change, that there's nothing more difficult to plan, nor more doubtful of success, nor more dangerous to manage than the creation of a new order of things. And I think mayors who are listening to this all know this, that if you want to change something in government, if you want to change something within bureaucracy or even in the private area, that you're going to have a lot of trouble with people making change and accepting change. And that is very much what green infrastructure and the water utility city nexus is really all about. Next slide, please. So the question for our mayors in the audience today is really, can you adapt modern water policies that really encourage innovation, growth, and sustainability in our great water cities? And that's the question. Hopefully you'll see from the slides that follow that there are ways to do this. Next slide, please. First thing to note is the cross-agency collaboration that's needed and is happening between the priorities of an urban water utility and the priorities of a mayor of an urban setting. And at the top there, it's really there are different focuses, but for water utility, you're looking at resilient water systems, and for a city, you're looking at a sustainable, resilient city with economic growth. And second, as I hear from mayors all the time, we're talking about crime, we're talking about education, we're talking about housing, we're talking about jobs, talking about public space, transportation, and so many other things down that list. And so many of them, what we're finding, can be related back to what the urban water utility priorities are if the utility is taking the perspective that a sustainable, resilient approach to stormwater management involves green infrastructure. Next slide. So we're really on the verge of very big change. It's happening in most major cities in the U.S. now, and I don't think anybody's talking about putting a green roof on every doghouse in every city, but we are talking about making big change. Next slide. In Philadelphia, the program's called Green City, Clean Waters, and this picture really says everything, I think, about whether you're a utility manager or a mayor. When you look at your city, how do you want it to be perceived? And here you can see the great water bodies. You can see the green. You can also see strong, dense urban fabric with a strong economy, all coming out from the same picture. Next slide. So our program is called One Water, One City, Many Places, and we look at every square foot in the city of Philadelphia and look to see how do we manage stormwater here. And basically broke up these programs into green communities, green transit, green rivers and streams, parks, schools, streets, businesses, parking lots, and universities. And for each of those, set up city planners working with environmental scientists and engineers to work with community and work with other agencies to figure out how we can change our city just a little bit, manage our water, and also improve our city. Next slide, please. This is I just pulled this out from the PowerPoint that I saw yesterday and threw it in here because it's really it's someone else saying the same thing that I'm saying to you right now, which is really about asset management for sustainable service delivery, and how at the left-hand side where we began really wasn't a lot of asset management going on in the water industry, and we've moved from there and we've focused this on doing this strategic planning of asset management and understanding how much we have to do, and that's where numbers like $1 trillion needed for the water industry in the next 25 years came from. And then we've even gone a little bit further and started looking at this holistic approach to life cycle maintenance and operation and replacement for our asset management. And finally, it's at step 3. It's that piece right there that talks about the drainage function and how it integrates with natural systems thinking, and how you account for the water balance services by providing the watershed systems. And the only thing it doesn't talk about here is how you connect that in with local mayoral priorities. Next slide, please. In Philadelphia, the way that we broke up our programs, I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide, it's a little complicated, but basically we have four different main programs. One is whenever the utility is replacing or renewing water pipe or sewer pipe, that is a great opportunity to go in and do what we call a green street, and what you may be calling a complete street, and I'll talk about that in a moment about bringing those two things together. Public retrofits means any opportunity where the public owns the land, might be a library, a school, a firehouse, and there is either a new building going in or a retrofit going in, and looking for opportunities there to work with those facilities to implement green infrastructure there. The redevelopment piece is basically development regulations placed on all development in the city of Philadelphia, and as of today we're capturing about the first 1.5 inches from every new construction that occurs, and that's been a great accomplishment for us. We're actually getting, it's about 0.4% of all the impervious cover in Philadelphia is being managed additionally each year. So it's been a great program for the city. The final program is really incentivized retrofits, which really means talking about private land ownership and creating an economic incentive for change on private land for stormwater management. And the approach to that and the key to that is setting up a parcel-based stormwater fee system so that you're actually creating a value and a credit for your stormwater. Next slide, please. And this is just one of, I'll show another slide similar to this one of projects being done all over the city of Philadelphia to meet our goals of managing water on land rather than in the sewer, and over 500 projects shown here, and very, very successful program. Next slide. And another way, go back one slide. Another way to just look at all this is look at it in terms of big programs, and whether you're talking about city transformation or making a destination watershed or whatever it may be, from these bigger concepts to take not just a project, but look at an entire community, entire site, and say, here's how we're changing the world. Next slide. Green and complete streets, very much you can see here that we're showing how green streets work, but what we want to do is have complete streets, which means when we build and rebuild streets, we want to also deal with pedestrians and traffic and bicyclists as well as with water. Next slide. This is a green roof of the Pico building in Philadelphia. That's a retrofit project, just showing that It could be done and can be done. Next slide. This is a new green roof that was placed on top of a new parking lot. So this is about 10 stories up and has access from 2 skyscrapers that are being built on either side of this parking lot, and has created an incredible open space for the people who work in these live and work in these buildings, and just a nice way of showing how things have developed over time, and we've improved the whole concepts of green roofs. Next slide. This is Copenhagen, and here's flower beds filled with water that fill with water during heavy rains, and when it's not raining, just leaves a beautiful sight for everyone. And as you know, in Europe, a lot of the green infrastructure ideas got started, and a lot of really cool ideas, neat ideas are happening now. Next slide. One other picture for Copenhagen. This is a park where any kind of sports could be played, or you can just hang out, except when it's raining. When it's raining hard, the park starts to fill up with water, and it becomes a stormwater retention basin. So this is the idea that, you know, every piece of land in an urban setting is precious. You don't really have places for stormwater retention systems like you do in the suburban rural areas of the United States. So here's a double use that that the utility can provide, dealing with their issues and also providing something back to the community. Next slide. And Mr. Thompson from Copenhagen points out that water is used as a resource to improve urban life. We look at Copenhagen as a hybrid city where you can fuse nature, urban biology, and human beings in a more appropriate balance. I think that says it all right there. Next slide. This is a porous asphalt basketball court in Philadelphia. You can keep going through these slides because there can be a number of this. And here's porous asphalt again on the right. And this is a park that was underutilized in Philadelphia. And go next slide. We made it into a stormwater retention basin, wetland. Next slide. And again, it just becomes a beautiful area. This is a slide. This is actually street runoff. This is water that is coming down the curb and about to go to a stormwater inlet, and instead it's diverted into this park. We made this this geometry here to make a pleasant thing out of the water, keeping it out of the sewer, and eventually this goes into a wetlands at the bottom of the park. Next slide. This is underneath the Market Frankfurt elevated subway system, and it was a pretty underutilized island, a traffic island, that we turned into a stormwater management system. Next. Park, where we also did stormwater management. You can keep going through these. This is the William Dix School. This is before. This is what schools in Philadelphia look like, unfortunately. And here's after we put in the environmental rain garden system. And if you just stay on this one for a second, you look at here and you can see it's still a schoolyard. It's still got a lot of blacktop, but it also has a lot of equipment. We worked with Trust for Public Lands, the park system, the school system, and the water utility to fund this change. And with it, we got a number of acres of water out of our sewer system and being managed more appropriately. Next slide. Just another school. Here's what it looked like. Next slide. And here's a picture of the rain garden that was put in there. And again, it created a lot of community interest and additional play equipment and other things coming in. This is just showing how we're looking to take these individual projects and start to put them together into a top rectangle on the top left there, where a lot of stormwater management was done through different means, private development, public development, and starting to make that connection to the Delaware River by having projects going up and down and following along and then ending up at what's called Penn Treaty Park, and making that connection between land and water. Next slide. Finally, this is an exposed sewer, so it gave us permission to go into the Cobb's Creek and to figure out how to rebuild that creek and make it more attractive. Next slide. And this process is called using fluvial geomorphology to redesign your creek and put people back in touch with nature. Next slide. A lot of the work that we did, we were able to do because we used some visionary materials early on. And this is one of our earlier pictures. This is a shot of Philadelphia as it was 5 years ago. Next slide. And this is just an idea of what can be. And it was using photography like this that captured people's attention and captured their imaginations and made these kinds of projects move forward. Next slide. That's it. I'm Howard Neukrug. I'm happy to have the opportunity to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Howard. Philly and the work that you've done obviously have served as a national model in so many ways, and we really appreciate you sharing your insights. As a reminder to folks, if you have questions for the speakers, please type them into the question box, and we'll take them once the presentations are over. And in the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Tom Rhoads now. Tom?
Hi, and we'll keep moving right along. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the cleanup of Onondaga Lake and how we have an integrated water management program there. Next slide. And today's narrative is kind of a bridge. It's about a lake, it's about green infrastructure, and it's about some integrated program. I always like to talk a little bit about the value of water, so let's go there. Next slide. Yep, so here we are. We're pointing telescopes far out in space. We're looking for water. Again, even though this is about the co-benefits of green, I also wanted to make sure you understood we know water is vital for life, water is vital for our economy, and water is actually vital for the quality of our life. So that's kind of still in the forefront, but there's a lot of good stuff that comes out of this. So next slide. And our story is here in background and location. We're Onondaga County is Syracuse, New York, and this is Onondaga Lake. And what you see there in the foreground of Onondaga Lake is actually the Metropolitan Wastewater Treatment Plant. Thank you. Next slide. And like a lot of other urban waters, our story has a tragic first act with legacy pollution associated with industrial waste and associated with sanitary pollution from combined sewer overflows, leads to consent judgments in the late 1990s. Next. And so as part of the early solutions to the consent judgment, there was an approach towards regional treatment facilities, and there were going to be literally 5 of these regional treatment facilities built throughout the city of Syracuse. They were very expensive, very intrusive. We were literally tearing neighborhoods down to put in these RTFs, and County Executive Mahoney wanted to move forward with the better solution, a better approach, so we decided to take a little different approach. Next slide. And we went and we entered into the first green infrastructure consent order for the resolution of combined sewers. So again, combined sewers are shown there on our sewer sheds, the different sewer sheds where we actually have combined stormwater and sanitary sewer that would overflow into these different sewer sheds into our receiving waters. Next slide. And so with the combination of green infrastructure, we again, as Howard talked about, we have this blended approach where we're merging green and gray, and we entitle our program the Save the Rain program. County Executive Mahoney's Save the Rain program really kicked into high gear in 2011, creation of a Project 50, a goal to actually hit the ground running with 50 different projects. We actually put 60 green projects into the ground that first year. And today we have over 175 green projects. Combined with green and gray, we're doing about 96% CSO capture. So anyway, I want to talk a little bit about those water quality things. And again, Howard kind of showed you, and this is another one that shows you just a little bit how these green infrastructure practices are the sponges that kind of act to capture infiltration instead of it going into our stormwater system, which causes CSOs to contribute to the violation of water quality. Next. And very specifically, we are seeing some tremendous water quality improvements based upon our green and gray infrastructure. And those water quality improvements shown here, this is chlorophyll and algae blooms. Next. And when we talk about water and we talk about green infrastructure, we're talking about water quality benefits, but we're also talking about the co-benefits. And so we have co-benefits here, which are collaborations between municipalities and public-private partnerships, collaborations on economic benefits, collaborations on educational opportunities, collaborations on the creation of jobs, and actually the benefits to water quality and beyond are clearly communicated. Next. So in our partnerships, we've been able to partner with the regulatory bodies, but we've also been able to partner with about 80 different private partnerships to construct green improvements through a green improvement fund. We've also been able to connect with Syracuse University and other community partners, including especially the city of Syracuse. Next. Obviously, the awards of getting your water clean are important. So water quality does build civic improvement. And so when we have water quality, we actually have public investment. This is the Lakeshore Amphitheater, which was completed last year, which is just a tremendous benefit for our community, made possible because we were able to clean up Onondaga Lake. Next. But that cleanup of the lake also stimulates a lot of private investment. So again, water quality is basic. That's what we're going for. But understand, please, that water quality does actually stimulate a lot of investment around your water bodies. Next. But going back to what green infrastructure allowed us to actually build our communication. So when we had these regional treatment facility approaches, we were basically going it alone. That's the only way you're going to get it done. But when we use green infrastructure, we get these co-benefits, and green infrastructure builds our communication. So in this particular case, we were looking for locations to site trees. We had over 5,000 different community members that we knocked on their doors. We benefited our program by being able to plant more trees, but also being able to communicate directly with the community on what the benefits of our Save the Rain program are. We got community organizations involved, and elementary schools, all sorts of different levels of opportunity built through communication with green infrastructure. Next. Green infrastructure has really helped us kind of rebuild neighborhoods and rebuild public confidence. It was completely the reverse when we were going with a strictly gray approach. So I guess I want to reemphasize the fact that green infrastructure really allowed us to turn our program around. We still have an integrated program of both green and gray, but green infrastructure really allowed us to do things completely differently and restore public confidence in our program. Next. The co-benefits of green, and I'm going to be a little more granular perhaps than Howard, but here's a typical green street and how a green street actually functions. That's kind of the before, the proposed, and then the actual after of a green street. We then also look for these aesthetic values without impacting pedestrians or traffic in a negative manner. Thank you. Next. And this is the connective corridor that we talked about. We did this in concert with the City of Syracuse and Syracuse University. You see on the left-hand side, there's some green practices. We also have a bikeway that connects SU Hill with the rest of the community, and all this was a beautiful green street. Next. So these green streets can happen anywhere. This is a typical light commercial area, West Onondaga Street, new curbs, asphalt, and then we're creating improved traffic patterns. Next, please. Typical in residential streets, you'll see the bump outs, as Howard talked about, that improves situations in your urban areas with a little bit of traffic calming. We added green space that improves neighborhoods, rebuilding neighborhoods. Next. We can do this in award-winning projects like our Water Street Green Gateway project here, an urban gateway to our community. So we're taking one of the downtown urban areas and redoing the area with green and porous parking. Thank you. And doesn't always have to be new. It's always important to actually think about there's usually some street extensions or some pavement that you're not using anymore. So there's pavement removal opportunities or huge opportunities to just re-benefit your community. Next. Typical residential street, although it doesn't show up right away, you'll see that there's storage and infiltration trenches that are no longer visible afterwards. Next. And we benefit commercial districts here, the Westcott neighborhood. It's a kind of exciting little neighborhood. And before and after, we improved the pedestrian experience, improved the commercial experience in your downtown community with the co-benefits of green infrastructure. Next. And vacant lots are typically a challenge in many urban communities, so green infrastructure is one of the opportunities to really revisit vacant lots. Here you're taking stormwater off of the street, moving to a vacant lot and repurposing that vacant lot for all sorts of beneficial uses for the neighborhood. Next. And here's a green infrastructure practice in a vacant lot that's completed. Next. Kind of roaring through these. Again, we also partnered with parks, so here's a typical bioinfiltration system that we put in Leavenworth Park. Nice little practice. Next. And here are the co-benefits of parks. Again, a rain garden where we're taking the rainwater off of the adjacent street and we're moving it into a rain garden here in the park setting, and it creates a very nice practice and also keeps our water cleaner by doing it. Next. And we too have a Courts for Kids program with the Boeheim Foundation and the City of Syracuse Parks Department. Again, these collaborations allow us to have porous asphalt courts for kids in the City of Syracuse. Next. Some of our practices, again, as Howard described, we are doing green infrastructure practices just about every type of facility. Here at the zoo, instead of actually using potable water for some of the different animal habitat areas, we're using stormwater and green infrastructure benefits to both improve water quality and improve the Rosamond Gifford Zoo. Next. And the co-benefits are many for facilities. In this case, it's a county parking lot in downtown Syracuse next to the Everson Art Museum, and completely transforming an old, pretty rundown parking lot into a brand new parking lot where we're using bioretention. Next. And around our downtown on-center, we have a parking garage where we have bioswales around the parking garage. We have porous pavement around the exterior of that open surface lot. Again, that infiltration, capturing the stormwater at the source, but also the co-benefit of improving the facilities of our Onondaga County Facilities Department. Next. And so I guess I wanted to really just round third here, allow for some questions, and hoping that I can help you understand how our story perhaps translates to what you're doing. Green infrastructure really does help solve water quality problems. That's first and foremost in our goal. But this green infrastructure has benefits that go well beyond water quality. Water quality has some serious benefits for the economy, but water quality also, through green infrastructure, allows us to communicate our message, soften our gray programs, it builds partnerships, it builds communities, it rebuilds neighborhoods, and frankly, it engages the entire community in many of these different practices, such as tree plantings and zoos and parks, where public education really becomes a key part of green infrastructure. And again, that wraps it up for me. On the next slide, we provide our resources on SaveTheRain.us, and we have an open source for all of the 175 projects that we've completed. There's fact sheets, there's project plans, technical specs, and photos on every one of the projects at SaveTheRain.us. Hope I left a little time for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. I really appreciate you sharing your integrated water management story and also racing through what was a lot of really great information. So thank you. We have just about a little bit of time for questions. We've gotten a few queued up in the question box. I did want to just kick off a question for both of you at the start, and to ask you each, what was or is your biggest challenge in working with city agencies that don't typically see themselves as being involved in water, and how did you overcome that, or how are you planning to overcome that? So maybe we'll start with Howard, since Tom's just taking a deep breath.
Thanks, Jen. And well, the biggest challenge is clearly making change happen and recognizing that everybody that you're working with is doing the best that they can to meet their mission, their schedule, under their budgets, and you come in and say, well, why don't you put a rain garden there? And the initial reaction will always be, that's not part of what we do. So there's a lot of time and effort that's needed to explain, show, demonstrate, innovate, coax others to work with you, and basically the way you do that is by finding that way that benefits that other agency. And if it's the streets department, what benefits them is a complete street. What benefits water is a street that is managing water properly. And so you figure out a way that you can leverage funds together and work together, and recognize that sustainable to water means trees and sustainable to streets means hardscape, and figure out how the two work together. It takes time, but it's very doable, and we've gotten a lot of converts.
I think Howard's spot on. Certainly it's his Machiavellian quote about change and that change culture. And again, that's the biggest factor, is you're actually changing what every department really looks at from their perspective. And the resolution of this is just to keep communicating with all these different departments and all these different partnerships that you can create.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we thank you for that. We have a related question that I'll share with both of you. It says, since green infrastructure is largely driven by water management concerns, but also has many tentacles into economic development, et cetera, to what extent should or does the funding come from programs outside your water utility, your water department? And he gives examples of stormwater fee, et cetera. But do either one of you have examples of where you've looked outside the utility to identify funding and been successful with that?
Right. Funding is clearly one of the most important pieces, and certainly funding for the long term, which means that once you put green infrastructure in, you can't come back 5 years later and see how it's doing. You need to have maintenance that continues with the sites. And so we've found a lot of different ways to get additional funding, basically through leveraging with others, and with the support of, there are so many foundations out there now and nonprofit groups that are so interested in green infrastructure, combined with making a city more sustainable, that there is funding that's out there. And even our school district, which is like many urban school districts, have extremely tight money resources, are chipping in to understand, and they understand that they can take a asphalt lot and make it just a little bit better for the kids, and combine that with additional education programs in environmental sciences and STEM work. So there's a million different ways of bringing in money, and we're kind of successful at it. It's a very expensive, labor-intensive process to put in green infrastructure, but I firmly believe that it's the right approach for cities trying to move to a more sustainable city.
For us, one of the opportunities was we created a green improvement fund. That was a public-private partnership. So we contribute a portion. We developed a whole pretty intensive program of granting a portion of the green infrastructure practices that would be placed on private property. So we are contributing towards a private property improvement that then is owned and maintained by the private sector. So you're improving private property, improving property value, but you're also gaining the benefit of having the private sector investment in your green practices. So that's one of the ways we would do it. But obviously the water resource challenge is pretty huge nationally. The American Society of Civil Engineers gives a D or a D- grade to how we're taking care of our water resources. So resources are always going to be difficult. And I think Howard talked about the opportunities of finding partnerships and finding opportunities of working with others as being a way to at least manage some of this challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if I could just add to that, and thank you, Tom, for reminding me about grants, because there's about $10 to $15 million a year in grants that the water utility provides to third parties, whether it be community groups, private landowners, aggregators of projects, or school districts to competitively put in proposals for green infrastructure on their sites, and hopefully, and part of what we balance what how good the project is by the triple bottom line benefits that are received by the community from that project.
Great, thank you both. One other question related a little bit to one of the slides you had, Howard, where you talked about the water infrastructure issues as they relate to city agenda issues and how they might be framed. And one of the topics on the list was job training or job availability. And I'd be interested in each of you, perhaps to the extent that it's relevant, talking about job training opportunities for local residents that may have arisen in the work that you've done in your cities.
Yeah, for Philadelphia, jobs is the #1 issue that we have here. We have a very large population of people looking for work, and our resolution for that is manyfold, and including in our gray work, we have requirements for local hires and also for people of minority hires, and looking at the opportunity for unions to add journeyman and apprenticeship positions onto their large job sites. For the green infrastructure, we're using something that's called Philly Power Corps. This is a group that comes out of AmeriCorps, and it's funded by the city to hire young men and women who may otherwise not be able to find a job that easily because of their education or their past. And we've had a lot of success in bringing these folks on, and not only getting jobs in the public sector, but also getting jobs in the private sector as a result of green infrastructure maintenance work they've been doing.
Our example is very similar to Howard's. We work very closely with the Onondaga Earth Corps. It's a local community group, AmeriCorps group, that's also building youth capacity to take care of some of our green infrastructure practices, and then we try to work together with the private property practices and introduce them and get them to also encourage them to use the Onondaga Earth Corps to take care of green infrastructure practices. It's a great training ground for all sorts of work development skills as well as the green infrastructure skills specifically.
Great, wonderful. So sort of going in a different direction, we have a question for both of you. You both have combined sewer systems in your cities, and there's a question that asks about the fraction of stormwater that you've been able to remove from the combined sewer systems in a cost-effective manner. And if you could maybe speak to how much capacity you were able to create in your combined sewer system, how you perhaps made the case in that specific instance for investing in green infrastructure as compared with gray infrastructure to address your capacity issues.
Well, this is Howard. Certainly, one of the things that's happening in the city of Philadelphia is that we have a lot of overflow. As a matter of fact, we capture approximately about 67% of our overflow today. And through our 25-year program of green infrastructure, which is going to change 10,000 acres of impervious cover to managed land, we're hoping to get up to 85% capture in 25 years. That may not sound like much, but it's an incredible amount of billions and billions of gallons, and love to do more of that, but we have run up against our economic endpoint, and where we are in Philadelphia, at least, is that the economic endpoint happens so much quicker than the environmental endpoint that we're looking for. In the end of this, unfortunately many years away, we're talking about getting up into the mid-90s or higher in percent removal of the rainwater and sewage water. But it's going to take time.
Currently in Onondaga County, we've been fortunate, although our consent judgment probably started quite a bit earlier than Howard's did. We are now reaching pretty close to the end of our consent judgment, which will hopefully be retired in 2018. We are currently capturing 96% of the combined sewer overflow and exceeding our stated goal of 95%.
Great, wonderful. Another question that's just come through, and it gets to education. The question is, given the need to have trained engineers and other professionals that are familiar with this work, do either of you, in the case of Syracuse University or University of Pennsylvania, Howard, where you are, do you see coursework for professionals in this area, and is it being taught?
Yes, well, in Philadelphia, it's being taught at all the universities, Drexel, Temple, Villanova, University of Pennsylvania, for environmental science, environmental studies, engineering, city planning, all are talking about these issues, and lots of millennial students who are interested in moving forward in this area. In the high school level, it's interesting that we've been putting together apprenticeship programs and taking the best of students from the different VOTEC schools and giving them internships and giving them mentors, and quite a few able to move through and get into the civil service process from there. So yes, it's critically important. And anytime we talk about what we're doing, education and combining the education with STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, learning, it's critically important.
Yeah, I think it's so exciting what we're seeing now with integrated water management as an education opportunity. You sort of talked about the water cycle in third grade, but now we're getting back to actually, instead of having all these different ways to segment water, we're looking at the water cycle again in a larger spectrum. All of the schools up in our area are really teaching it, and so excited to see the STEM programs and also great landscape architecture programs and lots of other disciplines that are really involved in this. So there's a lot going on in the field, and I think it continues to grow. I think areas where there could be more education and research are really just, the real co-benefits, the economic co-benefits, private property co-benefits of green. We're starting to see studies on how these other attributes of green really add value. I think as we get more research and we get more education on those areas, it will also bring about more funding for this. So that's what I'm looking forward to as the next kind of phase of this green infrastructure education process.
Wonderful. And one very quick question to close. Let me ask you each, if you had one piece of advice for mayors interested in advancing integrated water management within their cities, what would that be?
Speak with your water utility manager, and if that doesn't work, bring in some of the regional managers from around your city and see what you can do. See if you can form a partnership.
And my advice would be take the plunge. Go a little bit all in. These are sort of smaller practices. They're not huge mega projects or don't have to be huge mega projects. So try the water, dabble around in it. You might make a few mistakes, but you're really going to accomplish a lot on the way. And it's not all that complicated to get into it.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you to our speakers, Howard Neukrug and Tom Rhoads, for presenting their stories on integrated water management. And thank you to everyone else for taking part and engaging with your questions. I'm going to turn it over to Mel for some next steps.
Great, thanks Jenny, and thank you to everyone as well. So we're finalizing the details of our third and final webinar in this series with the same partners to be held in April, so stay tuned for that. We'll be sure to email all of you who've attended this one or the first one. On that one, we'll be exploring how cities can be leaders in adopting integrated watershed management throughout the watershed for best results, and we hope you'll join us again. As a reminder, you can go to efficiencycities.org to register for future calls from the Efficiency Cities Network. And thank you all for joining us. Have a great day.